Hello world, and of course, hello Philippines. Good day to all. For today's lesson video, we're going to discuss about authentic assessment, the meaning, the methods, and of course, the tools associated with it. Authentic assessment is an approach that can enable learning by measuring additional components of knowledge. Assessment, as we know, is a crucial part of the learning process where educators can see what students know and don't know, as well as why students do or don't understand a particular concept. As Leland Williams says, assessment is the bridge between teaching and learning. It is only through assessment that we can find out whether what has happened in the classroom has produced the learning we intended. When determining how best to assess student knowledge, most educators would choose an assessment that not only accurately measures a student's learning, but simultaneously helps to improve their understanding of the skills taught in that course and their relevance beyond the classroom. Such assessment would be considered authentic because they involve the application of knowledge in situation beyond the classroom. So authentic assessment is a type of assessment that requires learners to apply their knowledge and skills to and of course in the real world context. It measures what students know by demonstrating how they can apply their knowledge. So this type of assessment is designed to measure students' ability to think critically, solve problem, and of course, communicate effectively. Okay, let's have our expected learning outcomes for this lesson. So at the end of course, the discussion, students must have, number one, explain the meaning of authentic assessment and non-test assessment. The second is given examples of transversal competencies. The third is stated the 21st century skills based on the 21st, the P21 rather framework. Then number four is describe the features of authentic assessment and 21st century assessments. And lastly, discuss the complementary relationship of authentic and traditional assessments. The question is, what is authentic assessment? So here is the answer according to John Mueller. Okay, it is a form of assessment in which students are asked to perform real-world tasks that demonstrate meaningful application of essential knowledge and skills. However, according to Richard J. Stiggins, performance assessments, of course, call upon the examinee to demonstrate specific skills and competencies that is to apply the skills and knowledge they have mastered. And according to Wiggins, it is engaging in worthy problems or questions of importance in which students must use knowledge to fashion performance effectively and creatively. Let's go back to, of course, the title of our lesson. It talks about, of course, the meaning, methods, and of course the tools. Here, let's define what is method. So when we say method, it is the umbrella terms that describe the general approach or principle. Okay, a tool takes its main aim, of course, of its most distinctive, okay, characteristic. And when we say, of course, a tool, it's an engagement devices that are commonly used and recognized that have an inherent aim and can be, of course, used independently. However, when we say, of course, technique, it is a simple exercise or engagement activity that can, of course, be used when implementing a tool. Another question probably is, what does authentic assessment look like? So an authentic assessment usually includes, of course, the task for students to perform and, of course, a rubric by which their performance on the task will be evaluated. Okay, let's differentiate traditional assessment and, of course, authentic assessment. So, of course, we have to develop productive citizens. That's the aim, the same, okay, with authentic and traditional. So, must possess a body of knowledge and skills in TA. And then we have, of course, in authentic, must be capable of performing real tasks. Okay, then in traditional assessment, schools must teach this body of knowledge and skills. Okay, wherein in the authentic assessment, schools must help students become proficient at performing tasks. And of course, in the traditional test, the students of if they of course acquired the knowledge and skills. However, in the authentic, of course, have the students perform meaningful tasks. Okay, another way of course, differentiating traditional assessment or the TA and the authentic assessment, which is AA. So this is in terms of curriculum, okay, that drives, of course, the assessment. So in the traditional, we can have, of course, that the curriculum drives assessment, wherein, of course, in the authentic, it's assessment that drives the curriculum. So here we can have body of knowledge is determined first in the TA, while in the AA, the tasks are determined first. Second is, of course, there is the design of the curriculum. Okay, wherein in the AA, students perform to demonstrate their mastery. The third one is in the TA, assess to determine, we need to assess to determine if acquisition of the curriculum occurred. While, of course, in the EA or authentic assessment, there is the design of the curriculum. Okay, let's have, of course, the comparison of Miller, okay, in 2008. So he of Miller classified or compared traditional and, of course, authentic assessment using, of course, the 5 attributes. So the first attribute is, of course, the action or option. Okay, in the traditional assessment, it is selecting our response. Like, for example, letter A, letter B, or true or false. Okay, wherein, of course, in the authentic assessment, there is performing a task. So students are going to perform. Okay, and the second is, of course, method. So in the traditional, it is contrive or imagine. Okay, wherein, of course, in the authentic, there is simulation or real life. Okay, in terms of method, of course, in the traditional assessment, there is recall or recognition, wherein the authentic assessment requires construction and application. Okay, when in terms of course, focus, okay, in traditional, there is teacher structured, and of course, in the authentic, that is student structured. And of course, lastly, with the attributes that we have, of course, the outcomes, which is in the traditional assessment, it's indirect evidence. However, in the authentic assessment, there is direct evidence. Again, according to Miller, if he's going to, of course, to compare traditional and, of course, the authentic assessment, there are 5 attributes to consider. Okay, the first is, of course, number 1, action or option. The second is setting. We have, of course, the third is method. Okay, the fourth is focus, and the fifth is outcomes. Okay, so that's, of course, the comparison between traditional and authentic assessment. Let's have the other names for authentic assessment, or we have, of course, the 3 alternative names. So the first is, of course, we have performance assessment. The second one is, of course, alternative assessment, and the third is direct assessment. Okay, again, we have 3 names for authentic assessment. We have, of course, the acronym PAD: performance, alternative, and direct. Okay, let's continue. Why we need to use, of course, authentic assessment? The first is, of course, authentic assessments are direct measures. So we do not just want our students to know the content of the discipline when they graduate. We, of course, want them to be able to use the acquired, of course, knowledge and skills in the real world. Okay, the second is, of course, authentic assessment capture constructive nature of learning. So we cannot simply be fed, of course, knowledge. Okay, we need to, of course, construct our own meaning of the world. using, of course, information we have gathered and were taught, and our own experiences with, of course, the world. So that's, of course, authentic assessment captures constructive nature of learning. The more construct, the better. Okay, then we have, of course, another is authentic assessment integrate teaching, learning, and assessment, or the TLA. So in the authentic assessment model, the same authentic task used to measure the student's ability to apply the knowledge or skills is used as a vehicle for student learning. Again, it is used as vehicle for student learning. Okay. So another reason is that authentic assessments provide multiple paths to demonstration. So will have, of course, different strengths and weaknesses in how we learn. Similarly, we are different in how we can best demonstrate what we have learned. So we have, of course, the testing favors. Okay, those who are, of course, better test takers. Okay, so if we're going to consider this as a reason why we need to have the use of authentic assessment, we are, of course, acknowledging that our students have multiple, of course, intelligences also. Okay. So let's have, of course, the non-test assessment of learning. So now say, of course, non-test, it is an alternative assessment in the sense that it diverts from the paper and pen test. And of course, non-tests are tests that do not force the students to give their response. And non-test is an ongoing process. It gives, of course, feedback to help students increase competence. Okay, let's have the examples of non-tests. So example is, of course, number one, we have portfolio. It is actually a purposeful collection of students' works that exhibits, of course, the students' efforts, progress, and achievement in one or more of the curriculum. The second is, of course, the teacher observation. So the teacher observes the students while they work to make certain the students understand the assignment and are on task. The third is, of course, we have the slates or hand signals. Okay, it is a means of signaling answers to the teacher. And we have number four is daily assessments. So here, it completes, of course, the work assigned on the daily basis to be completed at school or at home. So students have the options to do the task at home and in school. The fifth is, of course, journal. So we actually write daily, okay, on assigned or personal topics. So we have, of course, the journaling. Number six is games. Teachers utilizes, of course, fun activities or these games to have students practice and review concepts. So games are actually very useful in, of course, having practice and a good review also for students. Okay, let's have another. We have, of course, projects. So it is a set of tasks that must be completed within a defined timeline to accomplish specific set of goals. Okay. If we're going to have, of course, the projects, for example, the projects is given for 3 days or probably a week. Okay, we have also debates. It is actually taking opposing positions on a topic and defend their position. Okay, we have, of course, the affirmative side and the positive, the negative and the positive side, or the affirmative and negative side, rather. We have, of course, number nine is the checklist. The teacher will, of course, make a list of objectives that student need to master and then check off the skills as the students masters it. Okay, number 10 is, of course, cartooning. Okay, wherein students will use drawings to depict, okay, situations and ideas. We have also models, okay, wherein students produce a miniature replica of a given topic, for example. Okay, you can see here in the picture, you have, of course, the models. Then we have, of course, the notes. Students write a summary of the lesson here. Okay, this is the notes. Then we have, of course, panel discussion. Okay, we're in a group of students verbally present information. This is an example of course, a panel discussion, this one. Then we have, of course, demonstration, okay, that presents a virtual enactment of a particular skills or activity. Here is the example of course, the demonstration. Then we have, of course, problem solving, wherein students are finding solutions to difficult or complex issues. Okay, this one. Okay, of course, there is problem. You need to think, and of course, you need to have solutions. And of course, so we have discussions wherein students in class verbally interact on a given topic. Take a look with this picture. Okay, so there is, of course, the teacher, and of course, students are interacting. So that's it. Okay, let's have okay, the authentic assessment, wherein it complements, of course, the traditional assessment. Okay, so here it is said that, of course, authentic and traditional assessment complement each other. Okay, and of course, assessment is not a matter of either or. Okay, and of course, it is a case of either you use traditional or authentic, then it is a matter, okay, of both, and both assessments are of course necessary. Okay, then learners cannot perform or do the real world task if they have not mastered, of course, the basic knowledge and of course the skills. So that's with, of course, the authentic assessment and of course traditional. So we cannot proceed with, of course, the authentic assessment if we do not, of course, have traditional. So it's still, okay, both, no, it's a matter of both or and. So both assessments are necessary. Okay, so that's it. There is, of course, a new taxonomy of educational objectives by Robert Marzano, and this includes, of course, the three systems, okay, which includes, of course, the cognitive system, the metacognitive system, rather, the self system, and the knowledge domain. So the three, of course, systems and the knowledge domain are very important in thinking and learning. Again, the three systems and the knowledge domain are very important in thinking and learning. So the Marzano's models of thinking skills incorporates a wide range of factors that affect how learners think and provides a research-based theory to help teachers, of course, improve their learners' thinking. Again, okay, according to Marzano, and it is being emphasized here that the thinking skills incorporates a wider range of factors that affect how learners rather think, and provides a research-based theory to help teachers improve their learners' thinking. Okay, so let's discuss one by one. Okay, the three systems. Let's start with, of course, the self system. So here, of course, we have the beliefs about the importance of knowledge, okay, and beliefs about efficacy. Okay, we need to be, of course, efficient. Then there is the emotions associated with knowledge. Okay, in the metacognitive system, so there are actually four. So we need to specify or specifying learning goals. Then we have, of course, monitoring the execution of knowledge. Then monitoring for clarity. We need to emphasize clarity here. Okay, we need to be clear. Okay, and then we need to monitor accuracy. So there is, of course, the accuracy of what we will have. Okay, then we have, of course, cognitive system as the last. So here, of course, there is the knowledge, the comprehension, the analysis, and of course, knowledge this utilization. So under with the knowledge is, of course, the retrieval. Okay, there is also recall and execution. While in the comprehension, there is analysis, the synthesis, and of course, representation. In the analysis level, there is, of course, matching, classifying, the error analysis, even generalizing, and of course, specifying. Okay, with, of course, the knowledge utilization, it involves, of course, decision making, problem solving, experimental inquiry, and of course, investigation. So the self system decides whether to continue the current behavior or engage in a new learning. Okay, in the metacognitive system, it actually sets goal, no? Okay, or the metacognitive system sets goal and keeps track of how well these goals are being achieved. Okay, wherein, of course, in the cognitive system, it processes actually all the necessary information and the knowledge, which consists of, okay, the first is information. Then we have, of course, mental procedures and, of course, physical procedures. Okay, let's continue with, of course, the knowledge domain. So in the knowledge domain, there is, of course, the information, and we have, of course, the mental procedures, and the last is the physical procedures. So knowledge is a crucial factor in thinking. Do you agree? Okay, yes. So knowledge is a critical factor in thinking. So without sufficient information about the subject being learned, okay, the other systems have very little to work with and are unable to engineer the learning process successfully. Okay, so mind, take note, of course, or mind this, my dear students, okay, that knowledge is the fuel that powers the thinking process. Again, I repeat, knowledge is the fuel that powers the thinking process. And information is the what of knowledge, wherein, okay, the procedures are the how to. Again, information is the what of the knowledge, or what. Information is the what of knowledge, and procedures are the how to. Okay, so we need to know the what and, of course, the how to, which, of course, talk about the process. Okay, let's continue with, of course, the partnership of the 21st century skills. So you can see here, of course, the framework, and you can have uh, the core subjects, which involves, of course, the, okay, 3 R's, the reading, writing, and arithmetic. And of course, the 21st century themes, color in green. So these 21st century themes, okay, are focused with the following. We have, of course, the environmental literacy. We also have, of course, global awareness, the financial literacy, the health literacy, the civic literacy. Okay, so we have 5 21st century themes. Supposing, okay, there is the mastery of this, okay, we have, of course, the life and career skills, okay, which is very important in order to thrive in this world. So, okay, the life and career skills involves the following. We have productivity and accountability. We have leadership and responsibility. We have also flexibility and adaptability. We have social and cross cultural rather skills, and there is, of course, initiative and self-direction. So these life and career skills are very important. Just take a look with, of course, being initiate, um, having, of course, initiative. Okay, so we need to have, of course, initiative in order to, of course, excel. And of course, we need to have self-direction. Together with, of course, productivity, and we need to be accountable with what we are producing. Okay, and of course, all of us, okay, or soon to be, of course, you or will be, of course, teachers, you will become, of course, leaders in your own field. Okay, so let's have the next. We have, of course, the information, media, and technology skills. Under this, okay, are the following. We have, of course, the media literacy, the information literacy, and, of course, information communication technology literacy. And, of course, at the center is the learning and innovation skills. Okay, and we have actually four. Okay, and this, of course, involves creativity, being creative, the critical thinking, even collaboration, and of course communication. So these four are very important, okay, as it calls, of course, learning and innovation skills. So in the baseline, if you're going to have, there is, of course, the standards and assessment. So we cannot go away with, of course, what is standard and, of course, assessment inside our class. Then, of course, there is the curriculum and instruction, okay, which is also very important. So our competencies are taken from, of course, the curriculum, and we need to have instruction in order to, of course, students to learn. Then we also have, of course, the professional development, and it calls for us, for teachers, of course, to continue learning as lifelong learners. Okay, so you need to enroll in the graduate school, in the master's degree program, or attend seminars, conferences, even conventions. Okay, either it is face-to-face or online. So we can have also webinar for that. And then the last is, of course, very important also is the learning environments we're in. Okay, of course, we learn. Okay. And a good probably learning environment is conducive, it's fun, okay, it's learner-centered for that matter, and so on. Okay, so this is, of course, the framework for partnership, okay, of the 21st century skills. So it's very important also. Okay, let's continue with, of course, the um, transversal competencies. So as defined, okay, here, these are competencies that are transferable between jobs, and transversal competencies are also called transferable competencies. Okay, let's have the classification of transversal competency. So the first is we have critical and innovative thinking. So here, of course, number one is creativity. It is the ability to use a wide rather range of criterion techniques to create new and worthwhile ideas. We have also entrepreneurship, and it is the combination of technical, business management, and personal determination. And the third is the application skills, which refers to skills necessary to implement innovation. So from the word apply. Okay. So letter B is, of course, the critical and innovative thinking. So we need to be critical and we need to innovate. So here included are the following. Okay, we have, of course, reflective thinking. And this is the ability to reflect critically. We need to be critical, as what I mentioned, on learning, experience, and processes in order to inform future progress. Then we have also the reason decision making. So it's the ability to use various types of reasoning as appropriate to the situation. So we need to, of course, to decide wisely, when having, of course, a good decision. Okay, and a good decision probably would affect, okay, even our lives. Okay, then we have, of course, letter C that talks about interpersonal skills. So here we have, of course, the communication skills, which include the ability to articulate thoughts. Take note, to articulate thoughts and ideas effectively using, of course, oral, written, and nonverbal communication skills in a variety of forms and contexts. Take note, in different ways. Okay, then we have organizational skills that refers to skills such as organizing and, of course, team administration. The question is that, are we organized? Or are we organizing ourselves, or probably our activities and so on? Okay, the third one is teamwork, and it refers to the skills necessary to be able, okay, to work with others towards, of course, a common goal. Okay, teamwork is really good. Okay, and of course, it requires a skill. Then number four is, of course, collaboration. So here, there's ability to work effectively and, of course, respectfully with diverse teams. Okay, and of course, it includes a skill also. Again, with the interpersonal skills, we have, of course, communication, organization, okay, the teamwork, and of course, the collaboration. So in acronym, you have, of course, COTC. Okay, so that's it. Then we have, of course, the letter D. It talks about, of course, media and information literacy. And particularly, this is about the ability to obtain and analyze information through, okay, ICT. So it refers to skills required to identify, locate, and access appropriate information sources. Then we have, of course, the ability to critically evaluate information and media content. So it refers to the skill required to evaluate the quality, appropriateness, and the value of the information. Okay, then the third one is the ethical use of ICTs, okay, which refers to the skills to understand, negotiate, and balance diverse views and beliefs to reach workable solutions. Okay. And then, of course, letter E is about the global citizenship. So there is, of course, the respect for diversity. Okay, and this includes, of course, the skills to understand, negotiate, and balance diverse views and beliefs. Always remember, we have different beliefs and views in life. Okay, then the second is intercultural understanding, which refers to representing cultural differences and work effectively with people from a range of cultural backgrounds. So take note in our class or in your class soon when you become, of course, teachers. Okay, there is the different range of cultural backgrounds, or okay, there is, of course, the different backgrounds for our okay, learners or students in the classroom. So we need to be, of course, inclusive, okay, and we need to embrace, of course, diversity. And then, of course, the third one is democratic participation. Okay, so it refers to skills necessary for participating okay, effectively in civic life through knowing how to stay informed and understanding governmental processes. Okay, so of course, if there are activities or projects being implemented by the government or by the community and society, we need to, of course, participate with that, okay, in a democratic form. Okay, let's have, of course, the mapping of the 21st century skills framework. So you can have, of course, the following skills. Okay, like you can see there research-based construct, okay, with, of course, critical thinking. And then we have, of course, collaboration, creativity, motivation, and metacognition. So you can see there, of course, the P21 framework terminology, okay, which when we say, of course, critical thinking, it is more, of course, of the learning and innovation, okay, which is critical thinking also. In the collaboration with research-based construct, it's learning and innovation also. It involves, of course, communication and collaboration. Okay, we have also learning and innovation, creativity and innovation. Okay, we have life and career skills, okay, which involves, of course, initiative and flexibility. Okay, and of course, there is life and career skills, which involves self-direction and productivity. In the NRC framework terminology, there is, of course, critical thinking. Okay, then interpersonal complex, which involves, of course, communication, social skills, and of course, teamwork. Then we have, of course, cognitive, non-routine problem solving. There is also, of course, the intrapersonal, self-development and adaptability, and of course, the intrapersonal, which involves, of course, self-management and regulation or self-regulation. It's equivalent to metacognition in the resource-based construct. Okay, in the ATC 21st framework, okay, ATC 21, okay, framework terminology, okay, in the critical thinking, okay, research-based construct, okay, it's ways of thinking, and it talks about critical thinking, problem solving, and decision making. And of course, the collaboration, there is ways of working, okay, and it involves communication and collaboration. Okay, in the creativity, so there's ways of thinking and it involves, of course, creativity and innovation. Okay, with regards to motivation, so this is living in the world, okay, and you need to have adaptability, flexibility, and self-direction. And lastly, okay, with the motivation, the research-based construct in the ATC 21, okay, talks about the ways of thinking. So there is metacognition or learning to learn. So that's, of course, the mapping of the 21st century skills framework. Okay, so we have, of course, the features of authentic performance assessment. And here, of course, it emphasizes on doing okay, open-ended activities for which there is no correct objective answer and that may assess higher thinking. And we have, of course, number two is direct methods of evaluation. The third one is it is a self-assessment. The fourth one is assessment of group performance as well as individual performance. And the last is extended period of time for assessment. Actually, supposing you have an activity, okay, or you will have, of course, performance assessment or performance task, students can actually continue that at home, okay, for a period of time, or probably a day or two or three, and so on. So these are, of course, the features of authentic performance assessment. Okay, so we have also the characteristics of the 21st century assessment, if you can see. Okay. And of course, this talk about number one, it is responsive. Okay. So the second one is, of course, flexible. And the third one is it's integrated. So in responsive, okay, as number one, visible performance-based work as, of course, a result of assessment. So it generates data that inform, of course, the curriculum and instruction does. It is called as responsive. And the second one is flexible. So assessment need to be adaptable to students, setting, okay, then rather than, of course, identical approach that works in traditional assessment. So the 21st century approaches are more versatile or versatile. Okay, the third one is, of course, integrated. So assessments are to be incorporated into day-to-day practice rather than as add-ons at the end of the instructions or during a single specific week of the school calendar. So what is best is that it is the assessment should be incorporated into a day-to-day practice. Okay, let's have the other, okay, characteristics of assessment. So we have number four, okay, is informative. So the desired 21st century goals and objectives are clearly stated and explicitly taught. So students display their range of emerging knowledge and, of course, skills. So exemplars routinely guide students towards achievement of targets. We have also communicated. So communication of assessment data is clear and, of course, transparent for all stakeholders. Okay, and of course, we have multiple methods. So an assessment continuum that includes a spectrum of strategies in the norm. Okay, we have also technically sound, okay, wherein adjustments and accommodations are made in the assessment process to meet, of course, the students' needs and fairness. And of course, systematic. So the 21st century assessment is part of the comprehensive and well-aligned assessment system that is balanced and inclusive of all students. So constituents and, of course, stakeholders, and designed, okay, to support improvement at all levels. So these are, of course, the characteristics of the 21st century assessment. So let's continue, of course, the lesson with having the authentic assessment that can be either the process-oriented or product-oriented. Take note, my dear students, okay, that authentic assessment is performance assessment. So the performance can be, okay, process-oriented or product-oriented. Okay, let's define process-oriented assessment. When I say process-oriented assessment, learning outcomes in the form or procedural knowledge requires demonstration of the process or procedure. So what words are we need to remember? Okay, we need to remember the word process or procedure. The second is, of course, the product-oriented assessment. So students' products are the concern of this kind of assessment. So it's more on, of course, the product or the output. Take note, the learner is made either to demonstrate the skill or the process earned or show the product of the application of the learned knowledge and skills. So again, okay, the focus here is, of course, the process or procedure, and of course, the product or the output. Okay, let's have, of course, in having the authentic assessment that we have, okay, we have, of course, the graphs. Okay, the G, okay, or GRAPS stands for letter G is goal. Okay, we need to provide a statement of the task. What is the goal? What is that the task? Okay, what's the objective that we need to have? Okay, the second is the R, which is the role. It defines the role and state the job of the students for the task. And that's, of course, role. Then letter A is, of course, identify the target audience within the context of the scenario. So it talks about, of course, the audience, letter A. Okay, S is situation. So we need to explain the situation. What's the context? Okay, that's the question. Okay, what is the challenge? Then we have, of course, letter P is for product. Okay, it clarifies what the students will create and why they will create. So it talks about, of course, the output or the product, and of course the process why they will create. Okay, somehow, no? Okay, and of course letter S is the standards and criteria and indicators. That's letter S. So it identifies specific standards for success. Okay, give rubric to the students. Okay, that's why of course we know of course the criteria and of course the indicators, or develop them with of course the students. So again, GRAPS means goal. We have, of course, role. A is for audience. S is for situation. P is for product. S is for standards and criteria indicators. Again, in making, of course, our authentic assessment, we need to have GRAPS. Okay. So we have, of course, as the last thing that we are going to have within this lesson, okay, we have, of course, the guidelines for performance assessment. So the first is establishing a clear purpose. Then we have, of course, identifying observable criteria. Okay, the next is providing an appropriate setting and, of course, judging or scoring the performance. So these are, of course, the guidelines for performance assessment. Okay, for our activity, okay, we have, of course, here the assessment task. So here is your task that you're going to do. So as number one, as facilitator of learning, how are you going to make sure that authentic assessment will complement traditional assessment? So that is 5 points, okay? Then using the template below, have a comparison of traditional assessment versus authentic assessment. That's 10 points. Okay, I have a matrix or a table for you to fill in. Okay, then in number 3, in your own understanding, of course, you need to explain the quote. Moving from traditional to authentic assessment is like going from knowing to showing. Okay, that's 5 points. And for our reflection making, after the discussion of the lesson on authentic assessment, which involves meaning, methods, and tools, okay, I realized that you need to complete this statement. I realized that, I believe that, I feel that, and as a facilitator of learning, I will. Okay, so you are going to submit this one in our Canvas. Okay, and probably take note of the due or the deadline of this activity. So for our references, here are, of course, um, the books that I have probably used, and of course, some websites that we can have, of course, for additional information. Okay, thank you so much for listening. I hope you learned something for today. Take good care. Okay, see you okay in probably next meeting during, of course, with our for the new rather lesson video. Okay, God bless everybody. Thank you very much. Bye.